Jake stood up and extended his hand to help Vextar to his feet. The gesture shocked everyone in the chamber, including the defeated Krillian warrior himself. After completely dismantling the galaxy's strongest hunter, the human was offering assistance instead of claiming victory or demanding tribute. Vextar stared at the offered hand for a long moment, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. In his culture, defeated enemies were either killed or enslaved. The concept of mercy from a victorious opponent was completely foreign to him. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and accepted Jake's help. As Vextar struggled to stand on legs that were still mostly numb from nerve strikes, Jake supported his weight without any sign of strain or impatience. The human even checked the Krillian's injuries with gentle, professional touches that suggested medical training. "You will need to see a doctor," Jake said quietly. "The nerve disruption will wear off in a few hours, but some of those pressure point strikes can cause complications if not properly treated. I can recommend someone here on the station who has experience with Krillian physiology." The crowd remained silent, unsure how to react to this unprecedented display of post-combat medical care. Many had expected Jake to finish off his opponent, or at least demand some kind of payment for his victory. Instead, the human was acting like a concerned medic treating a patient. Vextar's voice was weak, but filled with confusion when he finally spoke. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you helping me after what I did? I destroyed something precious to you. I insulted your entire species. I tried to kill you. Why show mercy to an enemy who deserves none?" Jake helped the larger being sit down on a bench at the edge of the ring before answering. "Because that is what my sister would have wanted me to do," he said simply. "Lisa believed that the galaxy could be a better place if different species learned to understand each other instead of fighting all the time. Killing you would not bring her back or make her pictures reappear. But maybe helping you understand why you were wrong will prevent other unnecessary conflicts in the future." The human turned to address the crowd that was still watching from the stadium seating. "Let me be clear about something," Jake said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's sound system. "What happened here tonight was not about proving human superiority over any other species. It was about defending my family's honor and teaching an important lesson about making assumptions based on appearances." Jake gestured toward Vextar, who was slowly regaining feeling in his extremities. "This warrior has defeated champions from 40 different worlds. He is genuinely one of the most skilled fighters in known space. The fact that I was able to defeat him does not make him weak or worthless. It simply means that he encountered a type of combat training he had never seen before." The human's words seemed to ease some of the tension in the crowd. Many aliens had been wondering if the fight meant that their own species were as vulnerable to human attack as the mighty Krillian had proven to be. Commander Torres approached the ring, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Jake," she said quietly, "we need to talk. There are going to be questions about what happened here, and some of those questions are going to come from very important people." Jake nodded and turned back to Vextar. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "I meant what I said about seeing a doctor. Some of those strikes can cause delayed reactions if not properly monitored." Vextar looked up at the human who had just destroyed his reputation, and then offered to help repair the damage. "I will see a medic," he said slowly. "But first, I must ask you something. Will you teach me?" The question surprised everyone within hearing distance, including Jake himself. "Teach you what?" the human asked. "Everything," Vextar replied. "Your combat techniques, your way of thinking, your approach to solving problems. I have spent my entire life believing that strength was the only thing that mattered. But you have shown me that I know nothing about real strength. I want to learn what you know." Jake considered the request for a moment. "That would take a very long time," he said, "and it would mean giving up many of the ideas you have built your life around. Are you sure you are ready for that kind of change?" Vextar struggled to his feet, refusing help this time, and stood as straight as his injuries would allow. "I am sure," he said formally. "I pledge my service to you, Jake Morrison of Earth, until such time as I have learned what you can teach me about true strength." The pledge sent a ripple of shock through the watching crowd. For a Krillian warrior to pledge service to a member of another species was almost unheard of, especially after being defeated in combat. But Vextar's voice carried the weight of sincere commitment. Jake looked around the chamber at all the staring faces, then back at the Krillian warrior. "I accept your pledge," he said, "on one condition. You will learn not just how to fight like a human, but how to think like one. That means understanding that true victory comes from making enemies into allies, not from collecting trophies from the defeated." Word of the fight spread through Kepler Station within hours, and from there across the galaxy's communication networks within days. The story grew in the telling, as stories do, but the core facts remained the same. Humanity's weakest representative had defeated the galaxy's strongest hunter using nothing but intelligence, training, and adaptability. The political implications were immediate and far-reaching. Species that had been considering aggressive action against the relatively new human settlements began reconsidering their plans. If this was what a peaceful scout could do, what might human military forces be capable of? On Earth, emergency meetings were held at the highest levels of government as officials debated whether to reveal more about human military capabilities, or to continue pretending that Jake was exceptional rather than typical. In the end, they chose a middle path. They would allow the galaxy to draw its own conclusions while neither confirming nor denying the true extent of human combat potential. Jake Morrison returned to his quiet duties as a scout, but now he carried an unofficial title that followed him wherever he went: the human who taught the hunter. His victory had opened doors for humanity throughout the galaxy as other species began to show a new level of respect for Earth's children. Vextar kept his pledge, traveling with Jake on survey missions and learning not just human fighting techniques but human philosophy and ethics. The former hunter became an advocate for peaceful resolution of conflicts, using his reputation to prevent wars instead of starting them. And in a secure facility on Earth, General Williams updated Jake Morrison's classified file with a single line: "Operational security maintained. Galactic perception of human capabilities adjusted to acceptable levels. Recommend continued monitoring." The galaxy had learned an important lesson about judging species by their appearance, and humanity had gained a powerful ally in their ongoing effort to find their place among the stars. All because one quiet scout had refused to let an insult to his sister's memory go unanswered. Vextar swayed on his feet, struggling to remain upright as Jake continued to circle him with calm precision. The Krillian warrior's legendary strength meant nothing when his nervous system refused to obey his commands. 3 of his 4 arms hung useless at his sides, and even his legs were beginning to lose feeling as the human strikes continued to take effect. "I do not yield," Vextar managed to growl through clenched mandibles. "I am the galaxy's strongest hunter. I will not be defeated by a weak human scout." Jake stopped circling and studied his opponent with those unnervingly calm gray eyes. You still do not understand what is happening here, he said quietly. This is not about strength, Vexatar. This is about adaptation. Your species evolved on a world where being bigger and stronger than your enemies was enough to survive. Mine evolved on a world where size and strength meant nothing if you could not think your way out of trouble. The human began moving again, but this time his approach was different. Instead of striking at nerve clusters, Jake began demonstrating the full range of human combat capabilities. He used Vextar's own weight against him, applying leverage and physics to throw the massive warrior across the ring despite being less than half his size. The crowd gasped as Vextar crashed into the energy barrier and slid to the ground. The impact would have killed most beings, but the Krillian's natural armor protected him from serious injury. What it could not protect him from was the psychological impact of being manhandled by someone so much smaller. How? Vextar wheezed as he struggled to his feet. How are you throwing me around like I weigh nothing? Jake helped him stand up, a gesture that surprised everyone watching. Physics, he explained patiently. Force equals mass times acceleration. If I can control your acceleration and use your own mass against you, your size becomes a disadvantage instead of an advantage. Human children learn these concepts in school. The human demonstrated again, using a hip throw that sent Vextar tumbling across the ring despite the Krillian's desperate attempts to resist. Jake moved like he was teaching a class, explaining each technique as he used it. Joint manipulation, Jake said as he applied a hold that left Vextar crying out in pain despite his armor. Every joint has a limited range of motion. Apply pressure beyond that range and the joint locks up or breaks, regardless of how strong the surrounding muscles are. Vextar tried to break free using brute force, but Jake simply adjusted his grip and increased the pressure until the Krillian was forced to stop struggling or risk permanent damage. Pressure points, Jake continued, releasing the joint lock and striking at specific locations on Vextar's body. Your nervous system carries signals from your brain to your muscles through predictable pathways. Disrupt those pathways and strength becomes irrelevant. The watching aliens began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented. This was not just a fight between two individuals. This was a demonstration of why humans might be more dangerous than anyone had realized. Commander, Torres activated her communication device again and sent another message to Earth. Recommend immediate review of first contact protocols. Galactic perception of human capabilities requires adjustment. In the ring, Jake was continuing his lesson in human combat doctrine. Environmental awareness, he said as he used the ring's own structure to trap Vextar in a position where the Krillian could not use his superior reach. Humans learned to use everything around them as a weapon because we had no natural weapons of our own. Vextar found himself pinned against the energy barrier, unable to bring his claws to bear because of the angle Jake had forced him into. The position looked simple, but it was geometrically perfect for neutralizing every advantage the Krillian possessed. Psychological warfare, Jake added, his voice still calm and educational. Fear and anger make opponents predictable. Calm analysis gives the advantage to whoever thinks more clearly under pressure. The truth was beginning to dawn on Vextar as he struggled uselessly against the human's hold. This small, unremarkable-looking being was not just defeating him, he was teaching him why the defeat was inevitable. Every technique Jake used was designed to turn Vextar's natural advantages into weaknesses. What are you really? Vextar gasped. No scout fights like this. No peaceful explorer knows these techniques. Jake released him and stepped back, allowing the Krillian to collapse to his knees. "I am exactly what I told you I was," he said. "A scout for the Terran Exploration Corps, but before that I was something else." The human's voice grew quieter, more dangerous. "I was a member of an elite unit that specialized in survival warfare against impossible odds. We were taught to fight in environments where everything was trying to kill us, against enemies who were bigger, stronger, and better armed than we were. We learned that the only way to survive was to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable than anything we faced." Jake began walking around Vextar's kneeling form, his movements precise and controlled. "My unit was called the Ghost Walkers, and we operated in places where regular soldiers could not survive. We learned to turn any environment into our ally, and any enemy's strength into their weakness. We became very good at killing things that should have been able to kill us." The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. Many of the aliens present were beginning to understand that their assumptions about humanity might have been dangerously wrong. "My sister Lisa was killed in a terraforming accident 3 years ago," Jake continued, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "She was trying to turn a dead rock into a world where families could live and children could play safely. She believed that humans could make the galaxy a better place through peaceful cooperation and scientific progress." Jake stopped walking and looked down at Vextar. "You destroyed the only pictures I had left of her because you thought humans were weak and cowardly. You wanted to add my species to your collection of defeated enemies. So let me be very clear about something. Vextar the Bloodrender." The human's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow every being in the chamber could hear him perfectly. "I am not the strongest human. I am not the fastest human. I am not even the most dangerous human. I am a peaceful scout who wanted nothing more than to finish his drink and remember his dead sister. If this is what happens when you pick a fight with one of our civilians, I suggest you reconsider any plans your people might have for testing our military." Vextar looked up at Jake with something approaching terror in his eyes. "What have I done?" he whispered. Jake knelt down beside the defeated warrior and spoke gently, like he was talking to a friend instead of an enemy. "You have learned something important," he said. "True strength is not about how much damage you can inflict. It is about how much good you can do with the power you have been given. My sister understood that. Perhaps now you do too." Vextar exploded into motion the instant the referee's hand dropped, charging across the ring with a roar that shook the chamber walls. His 4 massive arms spread wide, claws extended, moving with the speed and power that had made him a legend across the galaxy. The attack would have torn most beings in half, but when his claws swept through the space where Jake had been standing, they found only empty air. Jake had moved like water, flowing to the side with minimal effort and no wasted motion. He did not run or dive desperately away from the attack. Instead, he shifted his weight and stepped precisely to a position where Vexitar's momentum carried the Krillian past him completely. The crowd murmured in surprise as the human scout appeared to simply vanish from the path of destruction. Vextar spun around quickly, his natural armor scraping against the ring's surface. He struck again with 2 arms while using the other 2 to try to grab Jake and hold him in place. Again, the human moved with impossible smoothness, avoiding every strike. By the smallest possible margin, it looked almost like a dance, with Jake flowing around the attacks like he could predict exactly where they would come from. The Krillian warrior began to feel frustrated as strike after strike missed their target. He was faster and stronger than any opponent he had ever faced, But somehow this small human was making him look clumsy and slow. Vexatar roared and launched into a furious combination attack, all four arms moving in a coordinated pattern that should have been impossible to avoid in the confines of the ring. Jake ducked under the first pair of claws, twisted away from the second pair, and used Vextar's own forward momentum to spin around behind him. For just a moment, the human was in perfect position to strike at several vulnerable points on the Krillian's back, but instead of attacking, Jake simply stepped away and resumed his defensive stance. The crowd was becoming restless. Many had expected the fight to be over in seconds, with the human scout crushed into paste by the legendary warrior's first attack. Instead, they were watching something none of them had ever seen before. Someone was making Vextar the Bloodrender look foolish. Vextar stopped his assault and glared at Jake across the ring. "Stop running, coward," he snarled. "Stand and fight like a warrior instead of scurrying around like a frightened animal." Jake tilted his head slightly, studying his opponent with calm gray eyes. "I am not running," he said in that same quiet voice. "I am learning. You telegraph every attack at least half a second before you commit to it. Your left rear arm is slightly slower than the others, probably from an old injury that did not heal properly. Your natural armor has weak points at the joints where flexibility is more important than protection. And you fight angry, which makes you predictable." The casual analysis delivered in such a matter-of-fact tone sent a chill through the watching crowd. This was not the voice of a frightened scout hoping to survive. This was the voice of someone conducting a scientific examination of his opponent's weaknesses. Vextar's mandibles clicked furiously as he processed what the human had just said. "Impossible," he growled. "No one analyzes combat while they are fighting for their life. You are bluffing to try to shake my confidence." Jake shook his head. "I am not bluffing, watch." The human moved forward for the first time since the fight began, but his approach was nothing like Vextar's wild charges. Jake advanced with the patience of a stalking predator, each step carefully measured. When Vextar struck at him with his fastest combination, Jake was already moving to counter it. He caught the Krillian's left rear arm at the wrist, used the warrior's own strength to redirect the blow, and delivered a precise strike to a nerve cluster just above Vextar's elbow. The result was immediate and shocking. Vextar's entire left side went numb, causing him to stumble and nearly fall. The crowd gasped as they realized that the human had not just avoided the attack, he had turned it into an opportunity to disable part of his opponent's offensive capability. "How did you?" Vextar began, then stopped as feeling slowly returned to his arm. "Anatomy," Jake replied calmly. "Every species has pressure points and nerve clusters that can be disrupted with the right amount of force applied in exactly the right place. I spent the first part of this fight mapping yours." Vextar backed away, genuine uncertainty showing in his eyes for the first time in years. "What are you?" he demanded. "You are supposed to be a scout, not a warrior. Where did you learn to fight like this?" Jake advanced again, and this time there was something predatory in his movement that made even the bravest beings in the audience feel nervous. "I learned to fight on a world where everything was trying to kill me from the moment I was born," he said. "I learned from instructors who understood that raw strength means nothing without the intelligence to use it properly. And I learned that the most dangerous opponent is not the one who looks the most fearsome, but the one who thinks before he acts." The human struck again, this time targeting Vextar's right shoulder with a combination of strikes that looked almost gentle but left the Krillian's entire right side temporarily paralyzed. Vextar roared in pain and confusion as he realized that this small, weak-looking human was systematically dismantling his ability to fight. "This is impossible," Vextar gasped, trying to stay upright with only 2 functioning arms. "I am the strongest hunter in the galaxy. I have defeated champions from 40 worlds. You cannot be defeating me with these tiny strikes." Jake circled his opponent slowly, like a predator deciding how to finish wounded prey. "Strength is not everything," he said. "You rely on natural weapons and brute force because that is all you know. But humans had to evolve differently. We had no claws, no armor, no poison, no natural weapons at all, so we learned to use our minds instead." The human demonstrated his point by attacking again, this time using a series of joint locks and pressure, point strikes that were clearly designed to cause maximum disruption with minimum force. Each strike was precise and economical, wasting no energy while achieving maximum effect. Vextar found himself unable to mount any effective defense, as his nervous system was systematically shut down by someone who understood his physiology better than he did himself. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the galaxy's strongest hunter was reduced to helplessness by an opponent who looked like he could be broken in half by a strong wind. But appearances, they were beginning to realize, could be very deceiving when it came to humans. Commander Torres stood at the edge of the ring, her face pale as she watched Jake work. She had seen him fight before, years ago in classified operations, that the public would never know about. But even she was impressed by how efficiently he was dismantling an opponent who should have been far beyond his capabilities. Jake stepped back and looked at Vextar, who was now barely able to stand upright. "Do you yield?" he asked politely. Vextar tried to roar defiance, but only managed a weak growl. The proud warrior who had entered the ring expecting an easy victory was now completely at the mercy of someone he had dismissed as a weakling. For the first time in his life, Vextar the Bloodrender understood what it felt like to be completely outmatched. The cantina erupted in excited chatter as word spread that the galaxy's strongest hunter had just been challenged by a human scout. Beings of all species crowded around Jake's table, some trying to get a better look at the small human who had apparently lost his mind, others already calling their friends to come witness what promised to be the shortest fight in galactic history. Vextar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he looked down at Jake. The human was still standing calmly beside his table. But there was something different about him now, something that made the Krillian warrior feel slightly uneasy, though he could not quite identify what it was. "Excellent," Vextar said, spreading his 4 arms wide. "Finally, the little human shows some backbone, even if it will get him killed. I accept your terms, Scout. Hand-to-hand combat in the official dueling ring, no weapons, no armor. This will be over before it begins." Jake nodded once and started walking toward the exit that led to the station's dueling facilities. The crowd parted in front of him, beings whispering excitedly about the upcoming fight. Some were already making bets on how many seconds the human would last against the legendary warrior. As they moved through the corridors of Kepler Station, security personnel began appearing from various doorways and alcoves. Word of the challenge had reached the command center, and within minutes a tall human woman in a military uniform came jogging up to intercept them. Commander Beth Torres was the head of station security and a 20-year veteran of the Terran Defense Forces. She had graying hair and the kind of scars that came from real combat experience. When she saw Jake walking calmly toward the dueling ring, her face went pale. "Jake Morrison," she called out, slightly out of breath from running. "What the hell do you think you are doing? You cannot fight Vextar the Bloodrender. He has killed beings twice your size without breaking a sweat. Jake stopped walking and turned to face the commander. "Hello, Beth," he said quietly. "I am sorry you have to see this, but I do not have a choice. He destroyed something very important to me, and I cannot let that slide." Beth grabbed Jake's arm and tried to pull him aside, away from the growing crowd of spectators. "Yes, you do have a choice," she hissed. "You can walk away right now and report this incident to the proper authorities. There are procedures for dealing with harassment from alien visitors." Jake gently removed her hand from his arm. "The challenge has been made and accepted under galactic law. You know the rules as well as I do. Either being can withdraw only by admitting cowardice in front of witnesses, which brings dishonor to their entire species. I will not shame humanity that way." Commander Torres looked desperately at the crowd around them, hoping to find some way out of the situation. She knew things about Jake Morrison that the aliens did not, things that were classified at the highest levels of human government, things that made this fight much more complicated than anyone realized. "Jake, please," she said in a lower voice. "Think about what you are doing. Think about the consequences if you lose control in there. We have worked too hard to build good relationships with the other species to risk it all now." Jake's expression softened slightly as he looked at his old friend. "I will not lose control," he said. "I promise you that. But I cannot let this insult to my sister's memory go unanswered. You know I would not make this choice lightly." Beth Torres stared at him for a long moment, then sighed and stepped back. "Fine," she said. "But I am filing a report with Terran Command as soon as this is over. They need to know what happened here." The group continued toward the dueling ring, which was located in a large circular chamber deep in the station's core. The ring itself was a raised platform surrounded by energy barriers that would contain the fight and protect spectators from any debris. Stadium seating surrounded the platform, and within minutes every seat was filled with beings eager to watch the spectacle. As they entered the chamber, Jake pulled off his work shirt to reveal a lean but muscular torso covered in old scars. The scars were not random marks from accidents or casual fights. They were precise, surgical-looking lines that spoke of serious combat experience and medical treatment under difficult conditions. Several aliens in the crowd noticed the scars and began whispering nervously among themselves. Vextar removed his own clothing to reveal the natural armor plating that covered his body like living metal. His 4 arms flexed, showing muscles that could crush stone, and his claws extended to their full razor-sharp length. He looked like a walking weapon designed specifically for killing. The station's official referee, a neutral Zephyrian with blue skin and large black eyes, approached the center of the ring. He spoke in the formal language required for all legal duels. "Citizens of the galaxy," the referee announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "We are gathered to witness single combat between Vextar of the Krillian Empire, holder of the title Galaxy's Strongest Hunter, and Jake Morrison of Earth, scout of the Terran Exploration Corps. The terms are hand-to-hand combat only. No weapons, no armor. Fight continues until one combatant yields or is rendered unable to continue. Do both parties understand and accept these terms?" Vextar roared his acceptance, a sound that echoed through the chamber and made several smaller aliens cover their ears. Jake simply nodded once. As the 2 fighters took their positions on opposite sides of the ring, Commander Torres activated her communication device and sent an encrypted message to Earth. The message was short but urgent. "Ghostwalker is active. Recommend immediate classified briefing for all relevant personnel." Back on Earth, in a secure facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Clark Williams received the message and felt his blood run cold. He immediately activated the highest priority alert system and began making calls to people who thought Jake Morrison was just another peaceful scout exploring the galaxy. In the dueling ring on Kepler Station, Jake Morrison stood perfectly still and began controlling his breathing in a very specific pattern. His heart rate slowed, his muscles relaxed, and his mind entered a state that his old instructors would have recognized immediately. The memories came flooding back. Years of brutal training in Earth's harshest environments, classified missions that officially never happened, and a level of combat skills that humanity preferred to keep secret from their new galactic neighbors. Vextar noticed the change in his opponent's posture and felt the first real stirring of doubt he had experienced in years. The human looked different now, more focused, more dangerous. But the Krillian pushed the feeling aside. He was the galaxy's strongest hunter. No weak human could possibly pose a real threat to him. The referee raised his hand and looked at both fighters. "Combatants ready," he called out. "Begin on my signal." The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of the energy barriers. Hundreds of beings leaned forward in their seats, not wanting to miss a second of what they expected to be a very brief fight. Jake Morrison closed his eyes for just a moment and whispered something so quietly that only he could hear it. "This is for you, Lisa." The referee's hand came down. "Begin." Jake Morrison sat in the corner booth of the Kepler Station cantina, slowly sipping his drink and watching the busy crowd around him. The cantina was always packed with beings from all over the galaxy, traders and smugglers and mercenaries all, mixing together in the dim blue light. Jake preferred the quiet corners where he could observe without drawing attention to himself. He had just finished a 3-week mapping mission in the Outer Rim and was waiting for his transport back to Earth. The human scout was not impressive to look at. He stood average height for his species at 5 feet 10 inches, with brown hair and calm gray eyes. His clothes were simple work gear, nothing fancy or military looking. Most aliens in the cantina barely noticed him, which was exactly how Jake liked it. Humans were still new to the galactic community, only making contact 20 years ago, and most species saw them as weak and unremarkable. Jake pulled out his personal datapad and scrolled through the photos from his recent mission. There were images of strange new star formations, unexplored planets with purple skies, and detailed maps of asteroid fields that could be useful for future mining operations. Mixed in with the work photos were personal pictures that meant everything to him. Photos of his sister Lisa smiling in her terraforming engineer uniform, pictures of the two of them as children back on Earth, and the last message she had sent him before the accident that took her life. The cantina grew quieter as something large moved through the crowd. Conversations stopped, and beings stepped aside to make room. Jake looked up from his datapad to see what was causing the disturbance. A massive figure was walking through the cantina like he owned the place. The creature stood nearly 9 feet tall with thick chitinous armor covering his body like natural plate mail. 4 arms ended in claws that could easily tear through metal, and his head resembled a cross between an insect and a reptile. This was a Krillian, one of the most feared warrior races in the galaxy. But this was not just any Krillian. Jake recognized the distinctive scars and trophy necklace that marked this particular individual. This was Vextar the Blood Render, holder of the title Galaxy's Strongest Hunter. Every sentient being in known space had heard the stories. Vextar, had defeated champions from over 40 different species in single combat. He collected trophies from each victory and had never lost a fight. The Krillian warrior was a living legend, and he was walking straight toward Jake's table. Vextar stopped in front of Jake's booth and looked down at the small human with obvious disdain. His mandibles clicked together in what Jake knew was the Krillian equivalent of a sneer. The massive alien spoke in accented but clear galactic standard language. "So this is what a human looks like up close," Vextar said, his voice deep and threatening. "I have heard much about your species lately, but I am not impressed. You look even weaker than the stories suggest." Jake looked up calmly and nodded politely. "Good evening to you as well," he said in a quiet voice. "Can I help you with something?" The politeness seemed to annoy Vextar even more. "Help me?" the Krillian repeated with a harsh laugh. "The only thing you could help me with is adding another species to my collection of defeated enemies. I challenge you to single combat, human. Let us see if your kind fights better than they look." Jake shook his head and went back to his datapad. "I appreciate the offer, but I have to decline. I am just a scout, not a warrior. I am sure you can find better opponents elsewhere in the cantina." This response made Vextar's eyes glow with anger. The entire cantina was now watching the exchange with intense interest. Beings were placing bets on how quickly the human would die if the fight actually happened. The idea that anyone would refuse a challenge from the galaxy's strongest hunter was almost unthinkable. "Refuse!" Vextar snarled. "I offer you the honor of facing me in combat, and you refuse like a coward. This is exactly what I expected from your pathetic species. Humans hide behind their machines and technology because they are too weak to fight with their own hands." Jake continued looking at his datapad, though his jaw tightened slightly. I am not a coward," he said quietly. "I simply see no reason to fight someone I have no quarrel with. Please leave me alone so I can finish my drink in peace." The Krillian's anger was growing by the second. He had traveled across 3 star systems, specifically to find a human to fight after hearing stories about Earth's new membership in the Galactic Council. The idea that this weak-looking creature would dismiss him so casually was beyond insulting. "Your species claims to be worthy of joining civilized space," Vextar continued, his voice getting louder. "But you are nothing but soft pink weaklings who would not last 5 minutes on a real warrior's world. You hide behind your ships and your computers because you know you are inferior in every way that matters." Jake's hands stopped moving on the datapad. Several beings in the cantina noticed the change and whispered to each other nervously. There was something different about the human's posture now, though he had not moved much. "My species has proven itself many times," Jake said, still not looking up. "We do not need to prove anything to you or anyone else. Now please go away before this conversation goes somewhere neither of us wants it to go." Vextar's forearms spread wide in a gesture of mock surrender. "Oh, the little human is threatening me now," he said with cruel amusement. "What will you do, Scout? Run to your ship and call for help from your human military. Show everyone here how your species really handles problems." The Krillian reached down suddenly and grabbed Jake's datapad from his hands. Before Jake could react, Vextar crushed the device in his powerful claws, destroying it completely. The photos, the maps, the messages from Lisa, everything was gone in an instant. Pieces of the broken device scattered across the table and floor. Jake stared at the remains of his datapad for a long moment. When he finally looked up at Vextar, his gray eyes had changed completely. The calm, peaceful expression was gone. replaced by something cold and dangerous that made several nearby aliens step back instinctively. "You just made a very big mistake," Jake said, in a voice so quiet that Vexitar had to lean down to hear him clearly. "That data pad contained the only copies of photos of my dead sister, photos I can never replace, messages that were all I had left of her." Vextar laughed and kicked some of the broken pieces across the floor. "Then perhaps you should have been more careful with your precious human trinkets. What are you going to do about it, little scout?" Jake stood up slowly, and for the first time since the conversation began, he looked directly into Vexitar's eyes. "I am going to accept your challenge," he said. "Hand-to-hand combat, no weapons, no armor, in the station's official dueling ring. And when I am done with you, you are going to understand exactly why challenging a human was the last mistake you will ever make."